Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the debrief-ish here. How was myself?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm enjoying the Euros. Obviously, big game tonight for Scotland, so a bit nervous. However,
Hmm.
I'm all right. How's oneself?
Getting there physically. I'm up for it. I'm loving life. Euros back. It's always exciting. Haven't watched anywhere near as much of them as I'd want to. I would want to be in a situation. Let me change these screens around so people calm down. I have want to watch more, but because of the illness and being away and stuff like that, I haven't had the chance to really get into there as much as I want. But the matches I have watched, they've delivered. It's been an exciting time for all involved football wise. Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good. As long as you're not supporting one of our two nations specifically, although with us, I guess we're through. But it's good. It's good.
We might go through. Thank you very much.
I was surprised. I will say this when I was watching when I did watch the second Scotland game. I missed the first one, obviously, because I was away, but I saw the second one. I was surprised by. I guess it is because you can still go through. I guess you'd need a win, sort of thing. I mean, I guess physically you might be able to do it with draw. I don't know, but you would need a win. But I was surprised after the match when all of the sort of the pundits and the interview with I think it was Andy Robertson and a couple of other people was so positive because I felt like it should have been. I felt like you should have won that game.
Yeah, well, it's in our hands. Win and we're through. So let's rock and roll. We'll see what tonight's got against Hungary. So, but anyway, before we get on to that, shall we discuss? Well, from staying on the international scene, but switching from the Euros to Copa America, Edson Alvarez went off injured during the night. Mexico against Jamaica. Edson Alvarez against Michael Antonio, who had a goal disallowed from VAR. He scored, but it was ruled out. But Alvarez went off after half an hour with a hamstring injury. Now, prior to that, literally 24 hours, 36 hours before that, he was asked about the rumoured interest from Man United. And he gave a very vague answer. I'm focusing on
Sure.
everything with Mexico and we'll deal with it later. But I think he's maybe just ruled himself out of any transfer with a hamstring injury. So, but I'm gutted for him, actually. I really am, because
Yeah.
captaining your country at Copa America must be like possibly one of the biggest accomplishments you could do as a South American footballer. And he's technically done it, but his tournament's been cut short drastically. And I feel gutted for him, actually.
Yeah, I understand like why people might not have like the best vibe when it comes to international football. You know what I mean? Whenever it comes around, there is always a very large contingent of people who don't like it because it interrupts either the club season during the season or in the middle of it. Who cares? Like sort of thing. I get it. I understand. And when our players end up getting picked to represent countries, especially those that are, especially not England, which is where we are, so it's close. Like Jamaica for Antonio, Alvarez for Mexico. I fully understand why some people at least don't like that and find that frustrating and would rather they don't. Whereas I'm always someone who thinks it's like an honor. It's something to live up to. Like when I was a kid and I'm playing football on the street, I'm thinking to myself, oh, it's Charlie. He's banging it in for England. He's lifting the World Cup or the Euros or whatever. And the Copa America would be the same for Edson Alvarez. I would suspect he's probably kicking it around on the streets thinking about that. And so the idea of, like you say, being able to represent your country and not only that, being the captain at what is their version of the Euros essentially must be a massive deal. And it sucks massively to see him go off. And having said that, now back to the West Ham perspective. Do you want to see your player get injured? No. But when he's just been linked to one of the big teams in the country who you would not want him to go to, it's mixed emotions, let's say. It's mixed emotions.
It also depends on what West Ham's mentality was in regards to possibly
True.
selling Edson Alvarez. As fans, we have one opinion, which is no, we don't want to sell him. Some people are open to it, but it doesn't mean the club have that same opinion. And it came out yesterday that the club, and it was from Plattenberg, the German journalist with links to Tim Steiding, who, as I said before, I searched through all these tweets, not one mention of West Ham pre-Tim Steiding. Post when Tim Steiding arrived, suddenly he's got a couple of exclusives, and Konstantinos Mavropanos was the big one. Obviously, he's a Bundesliga reporter for Sky Sports as well, so it made sense that he had that story. But he was the one that had the exclusive. Fabrizio Romano got the jet pictures of Kudus. Plattenberg got the pictures of Mavropanos. So there's a bit of a link there. And he put up yesterday that we're reluctant to sell. However, a fee of around about 60 million might tempt West Ham. A very specific, I think it was 65 million put up, but it wasn't vague, as in it would need to be a big fee or something. It's not one of those vague ones that anyone can throw out. It was quite, there was a transfer value attached to Edson Alvarez yesterday through a journalist with links to Tim Steidten. And when I seen it, and obviously this is prior injury, I thought, maybe this is what we're doing, because there was a belief that we were going to sell Lucas Paqueta, and then when the FA decided to charge him, there was a couple of stories that came out saying it was a little bit of an issue for Tim Steidten, because he assumed he would have money from the sale of Lucas Paqueta to spend. Now, I looked at it naively, thinking, yeah, but either we keep Paqueta or we've got a lot of money to spend. Well, it's win-win, really. But doesn't necessarily mean that you're the guy in charge of your transfer window is thinking like that. Maybe he's banking on it, because it's something Leverkusen does. I always say Leverkusen sells one big player every summer, and they'll still probably do it this summer as well. There will likely be a big player that leaves. Simon Rolfes has said it will not be Wirtz. He's staying for another season. But next summer, who knows? We'll wait and see. I think it's maybe fair to assume that Tim Steidten might have a similar mentality at West Ham, which is now and again we'll lose one of our big players, but we use that money to go again. It's worked. The Leverkusen model has worked. That is the Leverkusen model. Accepting that you're going to have to sell a big player now and again, but use that money wisely. So with Paqueta out the window, perhaps he's looked at the squad and thought, well, who can I sell if I need to? And Edson Alvarez is possibly one of those. So, I mean, it's ruled him out of any move, likely. We'll have to wait and see how bad the hamstring injury is, but usually it's around a month and a half, 2 months, and that's been kind sometimes. I don't think it's one of the more serious ones. It didn't look like one of those ones. So pre-season, I'd be surprised if we've seen him early pre-season anyway. So gutting for Alvarez. Also, it's a little bit, maybe Alvarez wanting to go to Man U.
Yeah.
So not good news. Nobody wins here. Literally nobody wins. It's bad for West Ham, and it's bad for Edson Alvarez, and it's bad for Mexico.
Yeah. I think actually, before I say anything, Nick, thank you very much for the £2, sir. Hope you're well. Hope you're all good. Appreciate you massively. You're always around in the watch alongs and stuff like that. So always about Nick. Thank you. I agree with you. I think with Alvarez, like, when I was watching your video about the Man United thing and that recently, I mean, I'm like you. Anyone has a price, and if a club came along and decided to pay us double what we paid for him a year ago, I think it's kind of silly not to take it, if I'm being honest about it. Mainly because I just don't think the price is going to get much higher than that, so you sort of do it. But I also think that this summer we would be unlikely to get that amount of money. So it sort of is what it is. It becomes one of those ones where the price is the bids that come in go maybe not kind of thing, as opposed to like Kudus, for example, where I'm fairly confident this summer, next summer, wherever it might be, we would definitely get the price that I would take for him. Do you know what I mean? I think it's one of those ones. So it becomes an interesting conversation. And now with the injury, the chances are we're not just going to get it regardless. For Alvarez, at least specifically. And I think ultimately it means he's staying. And ultimately, I don't think it changes our transfer strategy, because if the fact we weren't going to sell him, if I think about it through and I go, we're not going to sell him, therefore that money's not going to come in. Well, we were still going to have to go out and probably buy a backup for him either anyway, or give Downs a chance, which seems unlikely to me, but that one or the two. Then realistically, that person was going to be here in case this happened with Alvarez anyway. So if he ends up starting preseason and playing all the preseason games, then I think that's only to be fair, I think that's probably a good thing cohesion-wise regardless. So it's like, it sucks, but it doesn't change anything, which I think is kind of the key for me right now. You know what I mean? The Paquetá stuff completely changes literally everything.
Yeah.
I also think when we're talking about like squad building, and we often think about like when we bought Geo and we were saying, oh, he's the Paquetá replacement, or maybe we're thinking he's the Kudus replacement and things like that. I think there's also maybe a in the modern football and the way that football's going and the way that we're sort of starting to build as a team and thinking about this idea of selling key assets, which is something we should be definitely doing. I do think there is probably something about when we're buying and selling players, thinking about their replacements in terms of value as opposed to positions. So like if you sell Alvarez for 60 million, say, and you sign someone for, I don't know, 10, 15 million who replaces him, but then you sign another big ticket guy who can be sold in 2 years' time in another position, and kind of investing in it that way and thinking about it in terms of like, like season by season, going, right, this season is the season where we're going to be selling Kudus. This is the next season where we're going to be selling whoever that Alvarez replacement might be, and like that thing, and sort of continuing to have that revenue happening. I think that's also something we're going to have to start thinking about at some point. I don't think it's now, but I do think it's something in the back of our minds that we're going to have to start like gripsing with a little bit.
Yeah. And before we move on, we've also got to consider the profit element of transfer deals as well. I think what we're seeing this week in particular is certain clubs massively taking advantage of a loophole in the PSR regulations, and those clubs are Newcastle, Everton, Aston Villa, and Chelsea. Chelsea are ready to pay 19 million for a player at the Villa Academy. Now, apparently, there's a lot of expectations on him and a lot of hype around him, so he's supposed to be really good. The next one along the conveyor belt at Villa Park, but 19 million for somebody like that it feels quite chunky. Matson's going to Aston Villa. Duran could be going to Chelsea. There's a lot of movement between those two clubs because of the way that the accounting works, that it's pure profit and it hits your accounts today, whereas you buy a player, it gets spread out over 5 years or whatever. So it looks like huge profit. So if we would sell Alvarez and double our money, it's a lot of profit onto the books for this accounting period or for the next accounting period in July going forward. Because as far as we're aware, our books are fine for this period, which ends at the end of June, of course. So it's quite a pivotal week for football. I don't think we'll be involved in it unless we're taking advantage of it, i.e. Wolves are under pressure. Although I don't believe Wolves are under pressure. I think Wolves just need to sell if they want to buy. Whereas in terms of making the books work, they've done that. They did it last summer. This summer, if they want to reinvest in the squad, then that's when they may have to sell one or two players to allow them to have that little bit of wiggle room. Now, before we talk about Max Kilman, Charlie, I just want to take some comments from the live chat. Wanda's is asking if with clubs needing sell, do we need to we'll see some transfer activity? I think we will. Don't know if it'll be West Ham, but I think we'll see the clubs I've mentioned. Nicky thought Soufal had a great game yesterday. His crosses were fantastic. Did you see it? Did you see the Czechia game?
No, I completely missed it.
Soufal was superb again. I thought he was really good against Portugal. I thought he was absolutely fantastic against Georgia yesterday. Souček's had 2 good games as well, but I do think Soufal has possibly been their best player in the first 2 games of the Euros. I think his crosses were superb. Taking corners, Charlie. Honestly, I'm not even winding you up. Soufal was on corner duty.
Here's the thing. It wouldn't surprise me if he was capable of. This is the thing.
I wasn't expecting it.
I would go as far as to say one of his best traits is his crossing, or at least at West Ham for most of the time. There's been times where it's been absolutely woeful, but there's been times where he was most notable for his crossing. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was actually all right at corners. Why we haven't tried it, I don't know. But
he was taking corners, and they were good, and it led to the equaliser. Not directly, the player headed it, can't remember who it was, and hit the post, and it hit Schick, who miscontrolled it, chested it, and went to volley it, and it fell too far away, but ended up in the back of the net. So it turned out to be a good miscontrol. But the corner was superb. His long throws were fantastic. I hate long throws at West Ham. And David Moyes is the pundit on the game. And his throws were, again, really good. It got chalked off for handball, and it was handball. Klozek scored, but it came from a long throw from Soufal, and I kid you not, it landed in between the penalty spot and the 6-yarder, right in the middle of it hit the middle of the 18-yarder. Moyes is doing punditry, and Moyes said he never threw it that long with me. But I think, and Phil's saying thoughts on Moyes as a pundit. heard Moyes while Charlie's dying? Okay, you're alive again. Have you heard Moyes doing his punditry?
Yeah, I quite like him. It's not quite in the pantheon of West Ham managers as pundits. It's no Bilic at Euros 2016. That was banging. That was the one. But I've quite liked him. I know I've seen some people get very frustrated about certain things he said.
Yeah, Mark doesn't like him, and the other Mark's agreeing with the other Mark that he's a poor pundit. I think he's been decent, actually. I think he's been a good addition. I've had to ignore him a little bit as a pundit on the Scotland game.
Sure.
Because basically at half-time we were drawn 1-1 in the game you see, and we were drawn 1-1.
Yeah.
And the question got levied, if you were the manager, would you be going for the win in the second half? And he said no. He said, no, I'd be waiting until the 80th minute. And I thought, but in fairness, the Scotland skipper next to him said, no, I'd be going for the win. And I think she was fantastic in punditry. I've really enjoyed a lot of things regarding the Euros. And there's been one or two pundits I think have been absolutely fantastic. I think Cesc Fabregas, I could just listen to him all day. Whenever he's on punditry.
Yeah, Cesc's been great, yeah.
Normally at halftime, I'm okay to I don't know, just go get a drink or whatever, go outside for 15 minutes, just get away from the telly. But when Cesc Fabregas is the pundit, I ain't moving. I'm waiting. I look forward to halftime when Cesc Fabregas is a pundit. And Thomas Frank, I think, has been superb. I think Andros Townsend on co-coms has been wonderful, even with his good impression of him when he was trying to pronounce the guy that scored.
I can't even remember the name now.
Was it the Albanian game he scored? The guy scored. I've got a feeling it was Albania because he scored. I think he scored an own goal. Then he went down the other end and got the equaliser.
That sounds right. And
Townsend just lost the plot. He just lost all composure trying to pronounce the guy's name, and he was basically like, Jimmy Knee, Jimmy Shoe, Jimmy Shoe.
Yeah. I'm just listening it back now because I ended up sending it to Geo because I started watching it because you told me about that wonderful quote he had about the yellow card, and so I was like, I've got to get involved in this.
Sensational yellow card.
Sensational yellow card. That's the kind of vibe that we want here. That's the kind of vibe we want.
For those unknowing, I'm a fan of a cynical foul on the halfway line when a team is counter-attacking. Mm-hmm. One of my pet hates in football is when a defender just runs alongside the guy, clearly on the break, when it's 3-on-3, and the defender has an opportunity to just take him out on halfway line, and he doesn't. Mm-hmm. And that game against Albania, there was a counter-attack, and he just absolutely wiped him out on the halfway line. Just Townsend said, that is a sensational yellow card. And I was like, there we go. Someone else with the same love of a rugby tackle on halfway line as I have.
It's one of my favourite things. I have, obviously, most of my friends, from where I grew up, supported Arsenal or whatever. I know I've told you this, but one of my friends finds you so frustrating. And he's like, I can't stand you. I was like, why? And it's because of when we were playing Arsenal, and I can't remember, it was maybe Pepe or whatever, and Cresswell just absolutely clattered him, and you were like, good, this is what he should be doing, and he just found the idea of you getting so hyped about a tactical foul just so frustrating that he's like, every time I talk to him about anything to do with Arsenal or West Ham, he always brings it up. He cannot stand it.
For a man that supports a club with Vieira and Keown over the years,
I know.
I ain't taking criticism over a country tackle from him. Right, then let's see what the live chat are saying. And Rhonda's asking, do you think Downs will get a chance with Alvarez injury?
Yeah, he probably will. Yeah, because I think he'll probably start pre-season in that position now. So it could benefit Downs. If it benefits anyone, it could benefit him in giving him a really good platform to try and prove himself, I guess.
I'm going to say no. I think he might get one in pre-season. I don't think Downs will be at West Ham next season.
Neither do I, to be fair. Neither do I. But
Mark says he's got no doubt that Souček and Soufal both raised their performance for their country.
Potentially, but I don't know. They both give off the vibes where they would just try 110% constantly. I mean, Tom Souček, that guy, I'm sure, could be run over by a train and would still be running around in the center of midfield trying to make it happen.
Right, listen, I'm gonna maybe get a bit of flack for this, but this is my honest opinion. I want them to. and it's not just them two; it's everybody. However,
Sure.
there's context here. This is a tournament playing away to Burnley on match day 8 of the Premier League. Does not have the same.
Sure.
I don't know what the word is, but it's just
Vibe, oomph. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's not the same as playing in a crucial group stage game for your country at the Euros. Yes, just like if we were to play a semi-final in the FA Cup, I would expect them to raise their game. I would expect them to perform better in that than on match day 20 of the Premier League at home to Leicester City or something. I think what's at stake is significantly different. And this is in the Euros, by the way. This isn't in relation to them playing in the Nations League or a friendly for the country. I don't expect them to be better for the country in those games. But when it comes to the Euros or the World Cup or Copa America, I expect players to just raise their game that little bit, because you have to. It's win the Euros or nothing, really. And I'm a bit like Charlie, and I appreciate we're in the minority these days, but I also think that representing your country at the World Cup especially, but should be the pinnacle of your career. That should be the ultimate. I think it's changed now. I think kids probably grow up dreaming of playing in the Champions League, but I think we're not quite in that generation yet with some of them, but also other countries are different. Does a Czechia player grow up dreaming of playing Champions League football? Because there's the clubs they support don't tend to play Champions League football, or do they grow up dreaming of playing for the country at the World Cup or the Euros? I wouldn't be surprised if it's still the latter and that this is the most important thing to them. I mean, I've got no problem with that. I think it's a wonderful thing, and I think maybe sometimes if England players had that attitude, you might have actually won more things since 1966. I think sometimes you get the impression that clubs come before country with some players when it comes to the British Isles, and I think that's wrong. So yeah, I don't take offence. I don't disagree, but I don't take offence to it either. They're both having wonderful tournaments, and I enjoy watching it. I feel proud watching both of them play. I enjoy watching those play really well, knowing that they're West Ham players.
Whenever it's a tournament like Euros, World Cup, doesn't matter. England, when England go out, all West Ham players. And in that process, when England are doing well, it's the ultimate goal of winning the tournament. But like, I always want them to do as well as humanly possible. That's just the way it is. I want them because, and the thing is I'm not even someone who is particularly. I'm not a particularly English person in a sense. I'm not someone who really thinks about it in those terms. Not particularly patriotic. That's what I was looking for. But when it comes to football, I am. It comes to football, I am, and I think it is a huge honour, and I want them to do as well as humanly possible when they go and play for their countries.
I think there's two comments here. They're right next to each other and fantastic. So DiCanio says, I don't have the same passion for England, for West Ham, club of a country. I get that. However, I was a way to explain why I sort of disagree. I agree with that. I get that. But Colin Wood does it and says every player has an emotional attachment to the country, but probably not their club. And I think that's significant. I think as a fan, you possibly will support your club more than your country, but as a player, a club is a place of employment for most people. That's just their job. But for the country, I think it's maybe a bit more of like you said, a patriotic thing. That this is the
and I think it's one of those things where like it was. I was at a get together with my mum and all of her friends, and I haven't seen a lot of them for a long time because obviously you move away, you don't really you see your parents' friends when you're living in the house, but the second you move away, you don't see them. But I saw them all a couple of weeks ago. And almost all of them were talking about the Euros to me. Obviously, they all know I do football stuff, so like, but not very many of them are going to get into the intricacies of West Ham with me because Jesus Christ, why would they give a crap? But all of them were bringing up the Euros, and all of them are talking about it. And there is that sense of just everyone coming together, and I think that is probably a universal thing, no matter what country you're in. I do think it doesn't matter if you're England, Scotland, Czech, it doesn't matter where you are, there is probably a moment where a tournament comes around and the whole country starts sort of talking about the tournament and thinking about the tournament. My girlfriend's parents, they don't watch football week to week, but I can tell you for a fact that when the Euros come on, if you sit down with my girlfriend's mum and watch it in the living room, she's going absolutely bonkers about England.
Yeah,
Right? It's one of those things.
Completely agree. Because some of my friends don't watch football, but they'll speak to me about football during the Euros.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
It can sometimes be difficult. Like I was somewhere recently, and the Euros was on, and someone said, "Oh, it'd be a much better game when they stop all this pushing and pulling." I was like, "Just."
You're like, that is sensational, yellow card.
I was like, no, just go away. Just go away. Just don't open your mouth. It was hard to go, what are you talking about? Stupid comment. But just remember that they only watch football for the big tournament, and that's fine. That's what I do it with other sports. I only
100%.
Tennis. I only watch Wimbledon. I don't watch the other Grand Slams. I did when it was Andy Murray because I watched Andy Murray, but I don't watch the other Grand Slams. Darts, I go in and out of darts as well. I don't watch every tournament. I don't even watch every Premier League darts on a Thursday night. It just didn't help that West Ham are playing some Thursdays, but I don't watch every single one. So I'm like, listen, you're a part-time fan for a lot of other things as well. Get back in your lane, Geo. But yeah, that one in particular stood out. It'll be better when they stop pushing and pulling. And it was literally at a corner. They were just like, just a normal little argy-bargy in the box. And she's like, what's all this pushing? Anyway, right then. Let's turn back to the live chat. Oh, I lost it. I had a good one, but I've lost it. Apologies. Oh, no, here we go. Matthew says, everyone's got a price. I feel more confident that we've got a plan if any of our players are sold. DiCanio said every player is for sale at the right price. William says money talks. Nick says get Alvarez back for treatment. We can do that. We can recall him. Whether we do or not, I don't know. But I think we might be able to, or Mexico might release him if needs be, but I'm not sure. Hamstring injuries can sometimes also be quite short, like a week. So
I guess that's what it is, right? It depends how long it'll be. If it's going to be in the duration of the tournament, I suspect he'll stay, and if it's not, then he'll probably just come back.
Yeah. Paul can't wait for the Euros to end. Don't get why anyone would want to support players from other clubs just because they wear the shirt of a country of birth. Not for him. That's okay. You don't have to.
Again, I fully understand. Yeah, I do fully get it.
I'm the opposite. I'm the opposite. I've got one thing I've disliked about the Euros, and this isn't Paul because Paul's not doing this, but I've got some, like, speaking to friends about the Scotland team, and one or two of them genuinely don't want certain players to play because they play for certain clubs. So I'm like, what? Like, just that doesn't matter. They're all wearing a Scotland shirt for the next month. Like, they're not running around with the Rangers badge on. It's a Scotland one. Like, I find it very easy to put the whole club thing to one side. But appreciate that's just me. And there's people like Paul, but Paul's not really doing what my friends are doing. He's just saying, I don't like it, so I'm staying away from it, which is, I think, a good thing, really.
I think I think it's totally fair, and I 100% get why people feel that way. I would say to someone like Paul, if that was the vibe, watch some of the other games because they're a vibe. But I 100% understand it. You know.
Simon's asking if anyone who hates England are English. I haven't really seen anyone hate England, to be fair.
No.
It's anti-international rather than anti-England.
Yeah. I should also say, just because it's at the bottom, I know you're higher up. All clarifies. Don't get me wrong, I'd rather England win than not, but I'm not overly interested. I think that's totally fair, Paul. I think it's totally fair.
Barry would rather see Ward Prowse play for England instead of Alexander Arnold. Mark says Moyes has confirmed he wanted Scott McTominay. Don't think we needed the confirmation, but it was, I guess it's nice to get clarity now and again, I suppose.
Yeah. Also, I mean, it also makes perfect sense at the time, and I understand why. I don't know. When he scored, when he scored in the second game, the draw, my reaction when that ball went in was the exact same reaction I had when Man United went 1-0 up in the cup final, which was just like my jaw just hit the floor. I was like, oh my God, it's happening. Oh my God, it's happening. It's happening, guys. It's happening. As Scott McTominay's thunderbolts went flying in off the goalkeeper's hands. Scott McTominay, another guy who people I think have vastly different not appearances. What's the word I'm looking for? Opinions on both internationally and then for their club.
Yeah, I completely agree. Michael's saying, what's your thoughts on VR and the Euros?
To be
I've left out the
fine.
second part of his comment for
Yeah,
a
I
reason.
think all right. But I'm not some. I've never been someone who's been. See, I've missed all of the talk about it. I should say this to start with. So I don't know what everyone's opinion has been on it because I've been sort of staying away from social media and I've not really been paying too much attention. Here's what I would say. I've never been someone who's that much against VR to begin with. Like, I think it's kind of long, but whatever. Like, it just is the way it is. I think it's been alright. I think it's been decent. I haven't been affected by it at all.
I think it's been really good. The only two, I mean, the Lukaku goal, this wasn't official per se, but the Lukaku goal getting disallowed last night was ridiculous. Like, absolutely ridiculous. Sure. It's a speck of dust he's offside by, if that. It's semi-automated now, so it sort of rules out human error to some extent because there's no lines getting drawn on or anything. But it's just that was too far for me. However, the referee has been fantastic, and the only two dodgy VAR calls so far have been from English referees: Michael Oliver when Spain played Croatia, and then Anthony Taylor when the Dutch scored against the French. That's the only two dodgy VAR calls in the entire tournament, and it's English referees and English referees on VAR getting involved as well. And you can see the frustration of all the players, especially the Dutch one, because it took a few minutes. You can see all the players going, "What's going on here? Why is it taking so long?" And you could probably almost tell, like Van Dijk, it was like, "Oh, here we go. We've got the Premier League referee. We're back to this long VAR call things." So I think that's got to tell you, Premier League. Look, two dodgy VAR calls for both Premier League referees. The rest, the Italians, the Dutch, the French, the Spanish, no issues. The English issue. Learn from that. Right then, in terms of what's the latest on Max Kilman, says Chad. So we bid 25 million. It got rejected. Apparently, we made a second bid. I believe we made a second bid for him. However, at the same time, Newcastle United have made a bid of money plus Elliot Anderson, which has also been rejected by Wolves as well. And they're sticking to their valuation of 45 million, but it's possibly ideal for Wolves because now there's two Premier League clubs bidding for him. And say bidding war, I think war might be quite an extreme description, but I think two teams timidly bidding on him is possibly a more fitting way of describing the situation with Kilman at the minute. But however, I don't think we've given up just yet. I think we've made a second bid for him. What that is, I don't know, but I don't think it'll be close to the 45 million they're wanting. I think you'd maybe find it's nearer the 30 than the 40 million pound mark. Do you want him?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think I would. I like Max Kilman. I like what he brings. I like his age. I like his profile. I like a lot of things. And if you ask me price wise, 45 million, no, I think that's too much. But at the same time, if it is if it is the one of Lopetegui's first choices, if that is like his guy that he really wants, then I would be fine with paying almost over the odds to make it happen because I do think that's important. We do on the. I won't answer it too in depth for obvious reasons, but on the Patreon we have a show called Analytics where we do like Q&As with Jack and Cal from Analytics United, and one of the questions we have this week is about the idea of how involved should Lopetegui be in transfers, for example, given that we have Steiden and Noble and all these other things happening. And I do think it is very important that managers get their men. I think a manager should be like I know like we've just come off the Moyes Steiden, which was reportedly like this, right? I don't think it was battling like the way everyone feels like it was, but at least ideologically two completely different things opposed, trying to pull each other in different ways. I think the manager should be a reflection. Their ideology should be somewhat of a reflection of the way the club is moving forward underneath the director, for example. So I think it's not necessarily a case of this is a Lopetegui pick and this is a Steiden pick. They should sort of be in somewhat lockstep, and that doesn't mean they necessarily have to agree on everything, but it should be somewhat the vibe at least going forward. And I do think it is important that in that case, if Lopetegui is like Kilman is the guy, to sort of go and make it happen. Don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean there are no limits on how much I would pay for him, obviously. Like I say, I do think 45 is probably too much regardless, but if it is true that it is his foot guy, then I would push it maybe further than I personally would like to push it.
Jake says 45 million is too much. Nick thinks 38 million at most. Marky says, I know it's always good to get players cheaper, but we've got to pay the money. We've lost players in the past over a couple of million. Michael says, no, David Sullivan, it's probably 25.1 million, his second bid. William says 30 million tops for Kilman. In regards to Callum Wilson, Robert's asking, what do we think of the link? I don't believe it in the slightest. It's quite a sporadic link anyway, but the price tag is something like 15, 20 million as well for a very injury prone and old Callum Wilson. I don't believe it. I don't. I think Newcastle possibly want to move him on, especially considering they are in the process of purchasing Dominic Calvert-Lewin, with a player going to Goodison Park at the same time. Not dodgy at all, but someone that cost Everton 1.5 billion is going to St James's Park, and somebody that came through the Newcastle Academy is going to Goodison Park. So just pure profit for both clubs. Not saying it's suspicious. It's just very beneficial for both teams. Before the deadline in
to
a
be
week.
honest with you, I think it was one of those ones where it seems suspicious, but it's probably not suspicious in any sort of way. It's
come on!
No,
Charlie.
as in, it's one of those things where you look at it and you go, it's part of the deal. It's just a swap deal. That's what it is.
It's not a swap. Well, why don't they do it as a swap deal then?
Because swap deals are bollocks anyway. Swap deals have always been bollocks. The whole thing is nonsense.
That's my point. That's my point. It's not a swap deal because they're basically saying you buy him for 20 and we'll buy him for 20.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I don't think that's suspicious. I think that's just the way it is. They look at it and they go, well, this is probably more beneficial to us at this point, so should we just do it this way? Yeah, sure. And then we just do it that way. I don't think there's anything.
Accounts.
Yeah, it's just accounting. That's all it is at the end of the day. It's just accounting.
Yeah. Listen, I think Newcastle probably do want Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and Everton probably do want I don't know how you pronounce the player. I know how you spell it. Minteh. I don't know how it's Minty or Minter, or I don't know how you pronounce it right, but that's how you pronounce his name, Minter. And he's going to Goodison Park for a decent fee as well. And it's like the guy has just joined Everton from Aston Villa. Again, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Is it Igbromium, the young midfielder? He's going there for 19 million or something like that. And it's just, there's a big loophole, and they're maximising that loophole in the next week. I think you'll see a lot of transfers between those clubs in particular in the next week. It might be 6 or 7 in total, but they know what they're doing.
I agree, but I also don't know if it's a loophole you can close. There's probably some way you can legislate against it to some extent, but ultimately, clubs are selling each other players. Unless you want to sort of I don't know. I don't know how the legislation would have to work, but it would be a loophole that would be difficult to close.
Yeah. Robert, I did notice you won the 2 lines on Match Bingo last night. 50 quid for you. Well done. The reason I didn't pick it up is because I'm not sponsoring this video, and the links are in the description. So I don't want anyone downloading the app by going to the App Store and looking for it. However, if you do have the app, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you go on, because on Wednesday night, this is strange, but just stick with me. On Wednesday night, there's the debate on TV. And everybody can get 5 free cards for the debate, and it's like a phrase bingo card. So it's all free.
My father was a toolmaker. I come from an NHS family. There's so many. Oh my God, there's so many.
So if you are watching the debate and you want a little bit of fun while you're watching it, go on the app and get your 5 free cards for it, because you might win some money as well. So, and there's phrases that one of them need to say in order for you to get ticked off, and they are what the common phrases that are brought up in debates, obviously. So hopefully a Hammers Chat subscriber will win some money on Wednesday watching the mass debate. We're like a mass debate here on Hammers Chat. Anyway, Andy says the one thing that worries him about Lopetegui is he's walked out of Wolves due to transfers. He could do the same with us. The club will be aware of that. That's the one thing I will say to Andy, is the club are aware that they've now got somebody that's walked out previously. So you want to...
And I also think it works the other way. He would also be aware of the situation he was coming to at the club.
Yeah.
I think there wouldn't have been conversations with any manager this summer that wouldn't have involved... I mean, there's never any conversations that don't involve some form of, right, what's the transfer policy going to be? How involved am I in the transfers? Blah, 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 blah. But also, specifically coming into a club where we've got Tim Steidten, who is growing in control, and the whole point of getting a new manager in, to some extent, has been about, right, we're going to give Tim Steidten the keys. Let's really push forward in this sort of role. And the fact he's announced again, you brought up a big point at the time, and I do think it's fair, the head coach thing as opposed to manager and stuff like that. I think it's something he would also be aware of. So it's not anything to worry about this summer, at the very least, is the way I would say it. Maybe in a season's time there can be frustrations about it and everything else, but at this point, if there's frustrations about it, then one of the two sides did not do their due diligence in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Right, I'll get a bit geeky in a minute, Colin Wood, to reply to this comment, because Colin Wood said in regards to the players that they'll cancel each other out. Newcastle make 20 million profit, but then spend 50 million, it's only 5 million profit. I'll get onto that in a second, because Kieran Maguire taught me this. This is what Kieran Maguire taught me in regards to accounts when it comes to transfers, and I didn't realise until I had that conversation with him. And it sort of blew my mind a little bit, and I was speaking to him at the time, recording it, and I had to go back and rewatch it to understand exactly what he's just said, because while I was listening to him the first time, I was like, right, okay. And I needed to listen to it a second time in order to fully understand. So I think I fully understand it now. I could be wrong, so don't take this, what I'm going to say, as gospel. Do your own research. However, this is my understanding from Kieran Maguire. But before we get on to that, Nathan Trott has joined Copenhagen. 1.2, 1.3 million, with add-ons of 500,000, which are apparently really difficult to achieve. But we've also got 20% sell-on clause within that deal as well, so that if he goes on somewhere else, we can benefit from that. So Trott is off ski. I believe Wes Foderingham has a medical next week, but I'm not going to say that because apparently I only use his name for clickbait. So, but
yes,
if he comes,
that famous spike in views we get every time we talk about
I argue,
Wes Foderingham.
I argue less people click on the video because of Wes. I argue he is anti-clickbait. He has the opposite. He's click off.
Wes, not if you Wes, if you're watching, not our opinion, not our take on the situation. Look, I think it's probably for the best in all parties involved. I think Nathan Trott, if he's got an opportunity to go and play for a good team, especially if he's going to get game time there, then I would never begrudge him. I would never begrudge him going into taking that opportunity and getting that opportunity. 1.5 million is probably a fairly decent price for him, to be honest. It's like, would we rather get 1.5 million? That's we're essentially gonna pay for Foderingham anyway from it. A pure profit. There you go. That's essentially going to pay for Foderingham anyway. Do you
know his wages? Do you know what his wages were?
Who's Trott's?
Foderingham's.
Oh, no.
Number one goalkeeper in the Premier League last season at Sheffield United. Now, granted, the worst number one goalkeeper in the Premier League last season, in my opinion.
Not mine, Wes. Not mine,
my
just to
opinion.
Be clear.
That's me, Wes. You can come at me for that one. Click off bait. 12.5 grand a week. Peanuts for a Premier League keeper.
There you go. It just financially, it just all makes sense. It makes sense for a third choice goalkeeper. It makes perfect sense for us, and it gives
Trott's probably on half of that at West Ham.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's mad.
So
that's actually, Wes, again, maybe change your agent, mate, because I feel like you should have been getting a little bit more.
That's what he was on at Sheffield United as well. Bearing in mind, we're bringing him in and basically as the training ground goalkeeper. We could have negotiated that as well, but I ain't giving you that much. You're no longer number one. Like you're getting less than that. But I also think I believe it's a 2-year contract as well. So again, that's possibly something to strengthen West Ham's negotiating. So look, instead of a 1-year deal, we're going to give you a 2-year one, but your wages got so I wouldn't be surprised if he's by far the lowest paid player of our squad next season that isn't a youngster.
Yeah, but I know people. Look, in an ideal world, I would love Trott to have stayed and to have made it and to have fought his way through into that. I would love that, but like,
I hope there's like a buyback clause as well, even if it's just I don't know, 3-4 million or something, so that we have made a mistake in 2 years' time, we can go and get him back from Copenhagen. I hope we've bulletproofed it to some extent, but it's difficult to put a youngster into a Premier League side. I think the keeper's the hardest position to put a youngster in. you look at James Trafford at Burnley, you know, one of the best youngsters playing for the England under 21s and stuff, goes to Burnley in the Premier League and he's rubbish. So I think it can be tough. The last thing I'll say before we disappear, I'm just going to say that I'm going to give my interpretation of the Keegan Maguire thing.
Good luck.
In a second, you know, so Wes should have his medical this week, and I believe Ben Johnson's leaving as well. So I'm not going to put that in the title.
Is that actually?
I believe so, Charlie. I believe so. I don't know 100%. I believe he is, but because I don't like to do the whole in the know stuff, so I'm not going to put it in the title. There's no clickbait with Ben Johnson here, and I've stuck it 45 minutes into the video, so only the loyal Hammers Chat people get this bit. But I believe Ben Johnson is departing West Ham.
I got a little bit excited when I saw a report that there's increased likelihood of him staying.
There's reasons he's leaving, but it's sad really. But what I will say in regards to Collingwood, I think it's because it comes down to actual profit on players. I thought it was more sales on players, but Keegan Maguire was explained it's not. It's profit. That's why there's a focus on selling academy players, because they are 100% pure profit, and that's why Chelsea wanted to sell Mason Mount. They're possibly selling Conor Gallagher. Ian Matson's going to Aston Villa because they're pure profit on the books. But also, you buy a player, and let's just simplify this. You buy a player for 25 million, you sell an academy player for 25 million. I'm keeping it really basic here. So when you buy a player for 25 million in a 5-year contract, it hits your accounts 5 million per year. Bosh, bosh, bosh. But when you sell a player for 25 million hits your accounts there and then. So you've actually shown a profit of 20 million. Although you bought someone for 25 and you sold someone for 25, your accounts show a profit of 20 million. Now, obviously, the following set of accounts, you're now 5 million down. But this is the whole juggling act that clubs have going on. So this is why you're seeing a lot of activity with Ian Matson going to Aston Villa, but then Chelsea's buying an academy player back off Aston Villa, because they can spread the purchase over a few years, but the sale hits their accounts today and balances the books that they need to balance in this period. So that's my understanding from what I understood from Keegan Maguire, but I could have picked it up wrong, but that's how I interpreted it.
In a world where financial rules are actually getting enforced a lot more, you're going to see a lot of creative accountancy and decisions that don't tend to make sense until you start thinking about it from those.
Robert, there's no sale. His contract is up. He's got 7 days left as a West Ham player, Ben Johnson. He's got 7 days, and then
I know we're wrapping up. Genuinely, I find that such a shame that he's going. I think it was such easy like business. It's such an easy business decision. Like, he might want to leave, and that's a totally separate thing, right? But from a West Ham perspective, it made so much sense trying to keep Ben Johnson, and the fact that we essentially mucked him about on contracts and stuff is so ridiculous. Like, it was such an easy win, and it makes me so concerned going forward about all these youth players coming through. We've already seen it a little bit with Mubama, for example. Obviously, Johnson, we've seen it in the past. Basically, since Reece Oxford, we've seen it almost every single youth player who's come through. It was such an easy dub. Stupid.
I don't disagree. A horrible situation that the club could have dealt with better a long time ago. It's not just now. They were trying to sort it at last minute, but the damage was done. The way they've treated Ben, the way the club have treated Ben for years, it has led to this, in the sense that he feels like he has to go. Like I said, it could be wrong. And I hope it is, because I'd love Johnson to be here, but I believe he won't be staying at West Ham, and that he's going somewhere else, because his contract's up, and he's going to go somewhere and try and get first team football. And that wasn't on offer at West Ham as well. So I think this is I'm sad, and this is it. I'm a bit like Andy. Good luck to him for his career. I think he has to go. And there's a big difference between being a West Ham fan and Ben Johnson fan. Kim's happy that he's leaving. Don't know why Kim's happy, as in he's not good enough for West Ham, or he's going to do something. So DC doesn't want to keep Johnson. Doesn't think there's that much fuss if he wasn't from the academy. I think he's a good player, but we will find out next season if he does go where he is, if he's good enough for the Premier League or not, because he won't be at West Ham. He'll be somewhere else, and we'll be able to evaluate him differently. In another team, sure. Anything you'd like to disappear before? Sorry.
Anything I'd like to disappear, like a hitman. I want to disappear. I'm just coming with it. Yeah, I think bit of quick Ryan Gauld admin. A bit of Ryan Gauld watch. We need to go. Someone tweeted it at us, and I saw the tweet, and then I forgot to do anything with it. And then I mentioned it to you before, and I've just been scrolling trying to find it. I cannot find it. So if someone watched this, and they probably have come from this show, if they tweet specifically me and you about Ryan Gauld, I think it's almost certainly from this show. So if you're here, thank you very much. Scored an absolute screamer against the New England Revolution this week, about 30 yards out, just absolutely smashed it in.
We've got someone that comments, he's Canadian, he comments on the videos now and again about Ryan Gauld, since we've mentioned him, saying that he's going to switch to Canada for the 2026 World Cup, and they call him the Canadian Messi, or I think they might call him the Scottish Messi, but he's going to go play for Canada in the 2026 World Cup because he's qualified. He can pledge his allegiance to the Canadians now. So they're hoping that he's going to be a Canada player in the World Cup in 2026.
World Cup 26.
Ryan
Gauld pulling the strings for Jonathan David. It's happening.
There is your fantasy league tip for the World Cup 2026. Get Ryan Gauld into the team. Man is scoring goals. I think he's got like 5 goals in his last 6 or 7 games now. So he's still pinging them in, Charlie.
Yeah, I don't like when you do inevitably go and watch his 30-yard screamer. I don't want to hear any conversations about the goalkeeper. All right, I'm not interested. He was bamboozled by Ryan Gould's technique, is what I'm going to say. Not just stood still and then watched it go into the net. I'm not having it. But apart from that, yeah, I think that's it. I think we've covered everything.
Yeah, the one thing I will say, because I appreciate him being a bit cryptical here, but Coco, it's the Ben Johnson thing. Not a Moyes thing.
Sure.
A club thing.
Sure. And then the one news story that I did see yesterday, we didn't cover. Souček to Real Madrid.
Yeah, I mean,
it was. Don't get me wrong. All the tweets I saw were completely missing out the part of the story where Sport were trying to say he was on a free transfer, which obviously he is not. So just like it's one of those things that you can write off so unbelievably quickly. It's nothing. But the vibes, though.
This was my point the other day about transfer rumors. Some of them are just so clearly made up. It's unbelievable. And that is one of them. It's just make something up. Stick it out there.
Mad libs.
Thank you, Ben.
But thank you, everyone, for watching. Appreciate it. Sorry, I spoke over you there, Joe. Appreciate you all for watching. It's my show now. Gio can stop talking. And we'll be back next Sunday. Of course, we've got all the videos in between. We've got the watch along for the Euro coming back. It will be back this week. As you can see, I'm coughing still. But I can actually do a show now. So we'll be back this week along with all the other videos. So subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video because it helps out massively. And we will see you next time. Cheers, everyone. Bye.